Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, aka Connor. Joined as always by the fantastic co-hosts of the show, George and Prath. George the finally funny, casual, and Prath the eloquent analyst. It never gets any easier to say those things. I cannot lie to you. It doesn't get any easier at all. How we doing, boys? All good?
Yeah, all good. Thank you, mate. How are you?
Very good, man. Very good. A little bit tired, but yeah, I'm okay. Prath, how we doing, man?
I'm doing great, sir. I'm doing great. Good to hear that you're doing good,
Good
and
man.
or a
Good
bit
man.
tired.
These fight cards seem to be just never ending. I feel like this is the first time in a very long time that we just had card after card after card after card. Like it's pretty crazy. And Bellator is not even back yet, so I can assume in the next couple of coming weeks when Bellator kind of fires up as well that the weekends are just going to be finished, absolutely finished. Friday nights are going to be finished. Saturday nights are going to be finished. Relationships are going to be finished because people are just watching too many fights. It's going to be absolutely crazy. But this weekend, we've obviously got a few heavyweights throwing down again, and it was lovely in the weekend as well to see a few heavyweights. Three fights, I think there was at heavyweight of the weekend. It's fantastic. We speak about it all the time on the show as well. The changing of the guard and these kind of new heavyweight fighters that are really coming through, and no more than the guys that are fighting at the weekend, Rozenstruik and Gane, both very, very early on in their careers as well. But we'll get to that a little bit later. There is obviously a few fights of honourable mentions on the build up of that. Prath, what's your favourite on the undercard, man?
Ooh. Um, I mean, I can never say that I'm not excited to watch Alexander Hernandez get some work, especially after. I mean, I think the whole world feels the same way about Alexander Hernandez after the Cowboy Cerrone fight. The other one I'd actually say that I'm looking forward to, and that's just from that one side of Alexander Hernandez just getting his butt worked. Apart from that, I really like on the preliminary card Sabina Marzo versus Alexis Davis. Sabina Marzo had two really, really phenomenal head kick victories in her quite a few of her early fights, and she was always someone in Invicta that was just ready to make that next move. And here she is fighting literally the top of the division, Alexis Davis, a UFC vet, someone that has been fighting for a very, very long time. In the big show against people like Ronda Rousey and things like that, man. And her submission and wrestling is going to be a threat. But I do see Sabina Marzo here, maybe not getting the head kick victory. I would hope for that because that's really, really awesome. In her last fight, she actually even got a rear naked choke when she kind of billed as a Muay Thai fighter. So really awesome to see her get the submission. She fights out of King's MMA, which is a phenomenal camp with Kelvin Gastelum, Rafael Gordero at the mantle there. So yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Nice one, man. Yeah, and you said about Alexander Hernandez as well, and he was kind of pitched to be this new big thing in the UFC, wasn't he? He was before the Cowboy fight. Obviously, the Cowboy was a stepping stone for him to kind of jump into stardom almost, and then Cowboy kind of sat him down a little bit and said, "Well, I'm not going to be the guy that kind of you're not bouncing off of me, young man." You know what I mean? And he obviously beat him up in pretty spectacular fashion, but he's still pretty early on in his career as well. I think he's 12-3 at the moment. Uh,
Yeah, he came in and had two like real good victories. One against Benil Dariush, which was a KO. One against Olivier Urban Mercier, which was a decision victory. And then from there, he's kind of had loss, win, loss, win. Drew Dober and Don Cerrone being the notable losses there. And Drew Dober put it on him. And I remember Drew Dober really, really gave him quite a bit of a beating there. And then the next fight, he came along and he had way more of a wrestling kind of style of fighting as well. Um, yeah, I'm just interested to see. I know he's fighting Thiago Moises, who is a good striker, good submission specialist as well. So really, really looking forward to seeing what happens. And I think what's really, really interesting is when you watch a wrestler against a jiu-jitsu guy. You know, we've talked about those style matchups and what ones kind of work against each other. I think this is going to be kind of a real good fight for Thiago Moises because he doesn't mind being taken down. He doesn't mind fighting off of his back, and he will attack submission. So don't sit still, Alexander Hernandez. You better be on your bicycle, my friend. Well, not my friend. I hope you lose, but we'll see what happens.
and it's not. It's probably nice for him to be fighting someone that's of a similar kind of experience level as well. Sometimes you see these guys, girls, etc. They're all pitched up against someone with 27 fights. The Ankalaev versus Krylov fight is a perfect example. Krylov's obviously got 27 victories and 7 defeats, whereas Ankalaev's 14-1. and you think the experience level going into that is going to be huge for Krylov as well. Very much to what we saw at the weekend with regards to Aspinall versus Arlovsky. A huge difference in experience, but is it kind of that changing of the guard and the young guy kind of coming in and showing that they've got that new age power and that new age kind of MMA approach instead of it being from a specific discipline background. George, what's your favorite fight on the card, man?
Hmm. To be fair, there's a few good ones though, right? Munoz Rivera, that's a pretty good fight. I'm expecting that to go the full distance though. I don't imagine either getting a finish in this, but if whenever you watch those kind of like lighter fighters, it's like watching them in fast forward, isn't it? They're just going constantly. But so in terms of that fight, they fought before, haven't they, the two lads? And I think Rivera took it the first time around, they split decision, so it was really close. So I'm going to take Pedro Munoz to get the reversal this time around and get a win. But when I look at the kind of like how they've kind of been since they fought, Rivera obviously he's 3-3 in his last 6, but his 3 losses have come against Jan Sterling and Marlon Moraes. So that is the top of the top. So, but it always seems to be that kind of quite often in these fights that when the guys get rematched against each other, the other guy who lost originally seems to pick up the win. And so for that reason, I'm going to take Pedro Munoz to get a decision win over Jimmy Rivera. But it should be a great fight. Could be fight of the night contender, potentially. But yeah, no, that's good on the main. Is it on the main card or is it on the top of the prelims?
Main card.
Main card. Well, there we go. But yeah, that's a good one to keep an eye on the main card for sure.
Yeah, there was one that kind of stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and that was Kroom versus. How would you pronounce that, Prath? You've got a better eloquence than I have.
Alex Caceres.
Caceres, there you go. Kroom
Yeah.
versus Caceres.
Or you can go with Bruce Leroy.
Bruce Leroy. I like that. That sounds good. Is Kroom the one with is he the hillbilly kid? Is that his nickname?
Yeah.
I mean,
the one that brushes there.
That's a fucking terrible nickname as well, man. That's a really shit nickname. But these two are going to throw hands, and obviously we were talking a little bit before about. I think Kroom's lost quite a lot of his fights via submission, and Caceres has obviously won a lot of his fights by submission. So the kind of betting odds on that are probably going to be very, very slim. But both of these guys got 12 losses as well, and I know you can't really judge a man by the amount of losses that he has, but 12 coming into it's quite a lot. It's quite a loss. It's quite a lot of losses to have on your record at this point in your career. What's your view on the amount of losses then, Prath? Because is that something that's going to deter you away from watching a fighter? Not necessarily watching it, but thinking that they're going to win, or what's your view, man?
That's a really interesting question, man. I don't know if it necessarily detracts me from wanting to watch them, because if you look at someone like Diaz, right? Diaz has a lot of losses on his record, but he's still very, very exciting, comes to fight. And I think a lot of his losses were kind of style matchups, lost a lot of decisions, like split decisions and things like that. So hard to say for me, but I would say I would prefer them to match someone up in that respect. Like, hey, he's got 12 losses. This guy's got 12 losses as well. And I think it gives them kind of an even playing field to go at it with. I don't know if it will really mean anything rankings wise or in the grand spectrum of the featherweight rankings. I don't know if it makes any difference there. But Alex Caceres has been a veteran of the game, man. He has been there for years and years and years. And so for me, I've always waited for him to have that breakout performance. And he's always had like glimpses of it, spinning kicks and things of this nature. Great takedown defense as well. Like Alex Caceres has got a phenomenal takedown defense as well. So it'll be an interesting fight. Do the losses make much of a difference to me personally? I would say no. I know that MMA is a wild sport and you can never really account for wins and losses like you kind of you're a little bit more beholden to in boxing, right? So in boxing, obviously that makes much of a difference on how much money you get made, where you're placed on the bill. Whereas in MMA, I feel like wins and losses are a little bit less accounted for. And I think who they are as a fighter makes more of an impact as opposed to their wins and losses.
Yeah, I agree. But obviously, there's another guy on the card as well who's got quite a few losses, and that's Alex Cowboy Oliveira, and he comes out, he dances, he sings, he's having a good time, and 9 times out of 10 he'll put on a performance as well. But like you say about the Diaz and even the Masvidals of the world that have kind of lost these decision losses and stuff like that, split decision losses, and it's very upsetting that kind of some people would just look at an L and think, oh, right, that's it. They just lost the fight. They must have been knocked out. They just kind of brush it over. Whereas some of these guys are, they're putting the work in. Unless you go back and watch a fight, you're not going to be able to. Max Holloway versus Volkanovski, for instance. Do you know what I mean? He's got 2 L's against Volkanovski, and you think, are you just going to see 2 losses, or are you going to watch the fights back and think, wow, that was pretty damn close? Do you know what I mean? So I think Cowboy's going to go out there and put on a show as well, and he's obviously facing, what is he fighting? Randy Brown?
Randy Brown. What a weight prospect. I think he was on Dana White's Contender Series as well, or on like Looking for a Fight, one of those ones. Amazing prospect. I love he represents Jamaica, and he comes out with some great music and stuff. So I've always been Randy Brown for me has always been one that I've wanted to see him do well. He's had a lot of really cool submissions as well, like Anaconda Choke and things like that. That I really love to see, because it's very, very hard to execute in that kind of situation. So big props to him. And very exciting fight, man. Really like that.
Yeah. What do you think, George?
Just going back 2 steps, boxing relies too heavily on these fights there where fighters just have guys just to keep their O, like keep losses off their record. The UFC, mixed martial arts, is different because they're matching the best against the best. And for me, that's why losses feel less weighty in this sport, because they're, when you're fighting the best of the best, then if you lose and it doesn't feel too bad. While boxing has this real weird stigma that people can't lose fights, which if it took that away and just put the best against the best, then we'd see more losses on everyone's record, but it would be for a more entertaining sport. I don't want to burst the bubble, but hasn't that fight, Oliveira and Randy Brown, being cancelled because of COVID?
Really?
Oh,
I think
man.
I think Cowboy's got COVID, but I don't want to.
I'm just reading it here. Randy Brown was expected to face Alex Oliveira, but however, Brown pulled out of the fight leading up to the fight due to undisclosed reasons.
What an absolute nightmare! It makes us want to. We're all praying to the MMA gods that 259 is going to be held together with fucking duct tape and glue. Do you know what I mean? Because there's some absolute bangers on that card as well. But it's just the way of the world. It's just the way of the world at the moment. And even pre-COVID and pre the world being as shit as it is, fights were still falling off. Do you know what I mean? There was no COVID at the weekend with was it Scully versus, what was the other guy called? Sorry, Elmer's.
Oh, Emma's versus Chas Skelly.
Skelly, that's it. And both guys made it. They made weight. They were ready to fight, and then all of a sudden it just got pulled. Last minute. It's just one of them things. Do you know what I mean? But sometimes I think the UFC should have like a little pool of people that are kind of waiting in the wings, just kind of ready to go. And so many people have been willing to take on these very, very last minute fights or short notice fights at different weight categories, etc. in the past. So maybe there should be a little kind of cash bonus for someone jumping in last minute and being like, you know what, it's a week's notice, 3 days notice, I'll take it, I'll jump in there, but let me be £2 overweight or something, and you would do it at a catch weight, but then obviously I guess if you're in camp and you're training for a certain person, a certain style of fighter, you want to match yourself up against, if you're training for a wrestling background fighter, and then all of a sudden you got this kickboxer comes out and you're shooting for takedowns and all kinds of stuff. It's gonna go very, very badly, isn't it? That's a nightmare, because it's always good to see Cowboy fighting. That's a bit upsetting. But another fight. Say again.
I was just going to say, just quickly, if you talking about things like COVID and that being a problem, you see Leon Edwards has said, I think it was today or yesterday, said that he's basically for the last 2 weeks not seen anybody apart from his coaches. And he's going to travel to Las Vegas 3 weeks early. So he's going to fly on Monday, apparently, to get inside the bubble so that his fight doesn't fall off. He's so desperate to get back and fight that he's just going to get in the bubble straight away and train in the Performance Institute in Las Vegas to make sure that the fight 100% happens. I suppose that's what fighters have got to do at the moment because of the COVID problem. So, fair play. Obviously, he's desperate to fight, isn't he, Leon? So it's good that he's going to go and do that.
The one point I wanted to make as well, just to round out that point about COVID, is just like the thing that I would love to see a little bit more is just keeping the news up to date as well. Like before we jumped on the podcast, we had real trouble kind of figuring out who's on the card, who's not on the card. The UFC website, Wikipedia, Google, all three of them have different ways of kind of communicating that. So for me, the only thing I would love to see is just better communication with the public in terms of like what the card is going to end up looking like, whether that's last minute cancellations and things like that. It's very hard to keep track of what's going on generally in MMA because there's so many news outlets and things like that. But I think just having it in one concrete place that we can go, okay, here is the cards, no BS. I think that would really, really change the game for us. And just in regards to COVID, kind of affecting some of these fights here, man, it's the way of the world right now. And I think we have to just be accepted of the fact that the unexpected is always around the corner, especially with something like COVID. That really, really takes away from, things like your respiratory. Look at Khamzat Chimaev right now, man. Khamzat Chimaev is in a real bad way. He's being flown out to Vegas and being like taken care of because he is the golden goose at the end of the day. But it's also because he's had real, real bad effects from this COVID. So wishing everyone is safe out there in Vegas. Take care of each other. Keep yourselves clean and safe.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And like you say, the UFC could definitely work a lot better with regards to putting the news out there. As you say, you've got Bloody Elbow, you've got Scrap Digest, you've got all these kind of big names that put news out and stuff like that. And they all get it at different times. They all post it at different times. And then by the time you're trying to actually look for something, you'd think that something like Fight Pass that you actually pay for a subscription, you'd think Fight Pass would actually be the first place that you'd be able to find these updates to the card and have that kind of news and stuff on there. But it just never seems to be. The card on there seems to be, the one from 3 weeks ago and no one knows what's going on. But obviously that's something that will develop over time as well.
What I don't understand is, right, the UFC have got this like all singing, all dancing app, like you can get on the smartphone. Why isn't it when fights fall off that they just can't put a notification through to your mobile phone? How it's not even difficult, is it? Like you see, there's all amount of apps that are able to do that constantly, but their app just seems to never update. So yeah, there's obviously something for the UFC to work on big time at the moment with that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I mean, George, you're pretty primal with regards to your technology skills as well. So it's going to be a tough ask if they want to fight. All right, George, do you want to come and do it, mate? You'll just quickly put the phone down, or try and work out how to put the phone down anyway.
Yeah,
tries to put the phone down, but it's actually a beer.
Yeah. No, but a fight they got put on this card as well is that Angela Hill versus Yoda, I believe. That wasn't on the card before, was it? But it is now. So, fair play to the UFC. They're trying to bring. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're really bad with regards to this kind of stuff. They move fighters backwards, forwards, put them on different cards, and they try and give as much leeway as possible. But Angela Hill and Yoda, I think that'd be a good fight, and it's nice. I think that's third. I think that's the co-main basically, and it's nice that the UFC are putting a lot more emphasis on the female fighters as well. You usually see quite a lot on the main card, which is good. Do you know what I mean? Because it's always been a very male-dominated sport, and especially like the pay-per-views and stuff like that have always predominantly been males as well. So it's nice to see them really honing in and bringing some women onto the main card. And obviously the weekend as well, we saw a fantastic bout between two absolute warriors as a co-main, I believe it was. And it's just nice to see. It's just nice to see that. How do you think the Angela Hill one goes down, Prath?
I just wanted to say as well, while you were making that amazing point, is that there's so many great women's fights here. Women's bantamweight, women's strawweight, flyweight. It's all across the board as well. So we'd love to see it. We want to see more of them. Angela Hill is a Muay Thai phenom, and I've loved her since day one of her coming into the UFC. She came through tough in the Joanna Claudia Gadelha season, and she was a standout from that season. Always been someone that has been able to adjust, move forward, do better every single time. Every time she comes out, she is a much better version of herself. And you hear the cliche, "Oh, this is my best training camp ever," and things of that nature. But she is literally coming out every single time and doing a better performance. So man, I've got a lot of love and respect for Angela Hill. Ashley Yoda's a tough customer. She's got great jiu-jitsu. She's great wrestler as well. She trains out of Dan Henderson's camp.
Mhm.
So she's got some great wrestling credentials behind her. But Angela Hill is just, for me, one of the more elite strawweight fighters that are out there. And I just think that, she was originally scheduled here to fight Felice Herrig, and I think that would have been a real great style clash as well. Felice being a great BJJ competitor and Angela being a great stand-up fighter, but she's kind of got the same kind of matchup, but just a different body type here with Ashley Yoda. So yeah, really exciting fight, and I would probably say let's go for the unusual women's fight choice, which is Angela Hill by TKO. Let's say in the second round.
Nice. Yeah, you know what? We've actually seen quite a lot of the women's fights go to a TKO submission and stuff over the past couple of weeks as well. They kind of always get branded to either be a submission or a decision. But the Dobson fight the other night, she was just getting elbowed to death, and then obviously that was a TKO stoppage. And there's been some real bangers, if I'm honest. Some real bangers.
Again, a point that we've made on quite a few of our podcasts here, we are still watching the women's MMA game evolve. And now we're seeing a real cool introduction to seeing these ladies be more aggressive out there and go for the finish a little bit more. Whereas I think maybe, you don't need to knock them out with one giant punch, right? And I don't think there are many people outside of maybe like Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg that are really capable of one shot killing someone. So, technical. It's kind of like watching the bantamweight male fighters and the featherweight male fighters, right? It's very, very quick. It's very it's just scrappy. It's scrappy. It's not like particularly super high level technique. Some of them do, like Angela Hill, for instance. It's got phenomenal technique. She throws incredible technique with her head kicks and things like that. Yeah, interesting fight.
Yeah, definitely. And then that obviously takes us up to the co-main. Yeah. Go on, sorry.
I was just gonna say quickly about like women's MMA is there's all these great fights get like being talked about or potentially being booked, which is really great for the female side of the sport. And obviously UFC 261's coming up in April, which obviously has now been moved to Vegas, but that's looking like it's going to be Weili Thug Rose as the main event. And then I read that they're talking about doing Marina Rodriguez, who obviously just beat Amanda Hebas, against Yan Xiaonan as the co-main. And you can't tell me that, like, when that week rolls around, that we're not going to be on here absolutely hyping the shit out of it, because that's two incredible fights. That is like, do you know what I mean? And that is how quickly the female side of the sport is developing. That is two incredible fights if they both get booked by the UFC, and two fights that completely deserve to be main and co-main. So, women's mixed martial arts is quickly going, and it's exciting to see. It's exciting to be a part of it, to be honest. Love
to see it.
Yeah, definitely. And when you have these kind of big names, the Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas, Jermaine, what's her name? Jermaine Durandamy?
Jermaine
Durandamy. Jesus Christ.
I got you, mate.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of these big names that are coming through, and even like, who was that lady that fought Edwards? She fought a couple of weeks ago. No, she fought like back-to-back 2-week stints.
Oh yeah.
But it's these kind of fighters. The women have really kind of said, well, you know what, we're stuck in the back here doing the decision wins and the submission wins. We're going to come out here and start making a bit of noise. Obviously, the Paige Van Zandts of the world never really made enough noise for the UFC and didn't get enough wins and stuff like that. But it's someone like that. And as we've said before about like Macy Barber, for instance, they're really pushing that female superstar again. Maybe they shouldn't put her up against the Mexican Ronda Rousey, but what do we know? But Alexa Grasso is going to be huge in the sport as well, I think, But that takes us up to the co-main, and another one of these fighters that has really made it like burst on the scene, obviously with his feud with Kutalabe over the past couple of years, and that's Ankalaev. He had a fantastic win the first time, I felt. I don't think it was an early stoppage. I think the guy was just completely rocked and didn't know what to do himself. And then it was a real kind of full stop, no question mark needed for the second fight, wasn't it? He put him on the ground and just kind of said, right, we're not doing this again. I beat you the first time. I'll beat you the second time as well. We don't need to talk about this anymore. But George, what do you think? Do you think this is too much of a step up for him? He's obviously fighting Krylov, who's, like we said, he's got a lot of wins as well. Prath, you're going to talk a little bit about how many wins and stuff and how he's won those fights. But George, do you think it's too much of a step up in competition this early in his career?
No, I don't. I think Ankalaev is a real is part of this small collective group of light heavyweights which are quickly rising up, and they're all going to be like nipping round whoever the champions' ankles are, begging for title fights. Guys like Alexander Rakic and Jiri Prokazka, Magomed Ankalaev is part of that group. Jimmy Crute could be part of that group as well. Jimmy Crute, if he continues to develop, could end up creating this huge oceanic fight with potentially a new light heavyweight champion in Israel Adesanya at some point. But he definitely is worth the hype train that currently he sits on. But, you know, he had that great win over Kutalaba in October, where he absolutely destroyed him. He obviously beat him in the first fight as well. And I just think that he's just got all of the kind of, like I keep saying, like, he's got the really good skill set, I think, to starch Krylov potentially. But that being said, Krylov is no joke. He came into the UFC on a hype train. He went 5-1, I think, in the UFC before he left the UFC again. He then went away from the UFC and won loads more fights. And since he's come back, he's only lost to the current champ, Blakovic, and the number one contender in Teixeira. So this is a huge step up for Ankalaev. This is a big, big test. Come through this test, though, and you're looking at some big, big fights, and people will start to take some serious notice of you. So I am going to take Ankalaev. I think he will get the job done, but Krylov is no joke, and this is a serious, serious fight for Ankalaev to try and get another win on the board, and I think it will take him to 15-1. So, yeah, no, but Ankalaev for me, I think maybe a decision, but I think he'll finish him late on.
Nice. Prath, you're going to talk to us a little bit about the absolute destruction that Krylov has left in his wake, right?
The Minor, man. The Minor is a veteran, again, of the fight game in general. I was just going to say the UFC, but man, this guy has been all over the place, and his record is outstanding, man. All right, so 26 wins, 7 losses. That's pretty standard MMA kind of win-loss record, as you see. But when you look at the knockout submission decision ratio, holy, then it goes off the map. So 10 wins by knockout, 15 by submission, 1 by decision. His last fight was a decision win against Johnny Walker, who is, you know, a massive, massive, massive prospect in that light heavyweight division. Someone that they are trying to strut that rocket ship behind and give him those big fights. They matched him up against the Minor, man, and the Minor just put him, put work on him, man. It was beautiful to watch as well. Like, he actually, like, Johnny Walker is such a dangerous, explosive athlete as well. And I think Nikita Krylov plays such a smart game, shutting him down and just kind of doing what he does best, which is just to be a grinder. And the other thing I want to mention is, like, I love the diversity of that. It's 10 knockouts, 15 submissions, right? No real, you know, and all the submissions: rear naked choke, guillotine, rear naked choke, standing guillotine. You know, he's going for one of 2 submissions, or he's going to knock you out. And the knockouts are hands, kicks, knees, all over the gaff, right? So you can tell this guy is incredibly well-rounded. And I got to agree, George, this is going to be Ankalaev's biggest test so far. I think he will be tested in every department as well. And I think you don't see many submission wins in Ankalaev's record, but you do see a lot of submission losses on Krylov's record. So I do think that you will maybe see Ankalaev, you know, just kind of exposing that kind of hole within Nikita Krylov's game. He apparently looks like he's susceptible to submission. Obviously, winning a lot of his fights by submission as well kind of throws that into whack there a little bit. But I would assume that he's going to kind of come out and be heavy and grapple, and I think he's going to probably cruise to a little bit of a decision victory here against Krylov. And I'm going to agree with George here and say Ankalaev's got this.
Wow, fair enough.
But
Nice.
Krylov is a threat, man, and Krylov is dangerous. And as you can see from his record, man, he doesn't come in to point fight you, man. He comes in to destroy you. So I'm just really hoping that it kind of like works out like the Kutalaba fight, where Kutalaba came out and he's just so overly aggressive that Magomed just was able to hit him with that beautiful, just like that one perfect shot and just put him out.
Yeah, I think these guys are these are big guys as well. You know, they're very big and they
Yeah.
hit very very hard. They're very stocky, very thick set guys, and I think it's going to be very much a I'm going to knock you out or you're going to knock me out kind of fight. I don't see it going the distance personally. I think one of them will catch that sweet spot on the chin or the side of the temple or something like that, and I think it will result in a knockout. Imagine if we saw a double knockout. They both go for a hook, bang, they're both on the ground. Who knows? This is the sport of MMA, and that's why we love it so much, that anything could happen at any point. And it'll be, I think if it was Herb Dean, he'd just be running. He'd still be running. He'd just be doing laps of the octagon, not knowing what to do of himself. But George, the question on everyone's lips this week is who is in the George's Casual Crush Corner?
Come on down to Crush Corner. I need like an intro, boy.
I love it.
So you out with that, mate.
But anyway, Crush Corner this week. Obviously, we're gonna have to go for the main event. I did consider Ankalaev because I think he is really great. He really is good. But we all know how much I do love old Cyril Gane, Big Cyril, and Cyril Gane. Man, this is a test for Big Cyril. He's got to, come through this, and you're going to find yourself in the top 3 ranked in the world, and you can start calling on some big names. I would call for Derek Lewis because I think that would be great. He's just won. That would be perfect. You could almost say as well that whoever comes through that deserves to then fight for the title once John Jones has had his fight. So, it's a big night for Cyril Gane. But yeah, no, he's coming down. He's going to be in my Crush Corner. He is one of these new heavyweights, although he is like 30 years old, so he's not young, but he's kind of in that prime zone for a heavyweight now. And he's got all of that lovely fluid movement and that all-round like toolbox skill set that I love, and that I think he's gonna have too much overall for Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now, that being said, though, Biggie Boy is probably one of the best kickboxers at heavyweight, and so I don't know if Cyril Gane wants to get into a kickboxing match with him, because that could be a problem for Cyril Gane. I was reading today, though, that in 11 fights that Biggie Boy, 11 victories that Jairzinho Rozenstruik's had, he's had 10 knockouts. So we know that Jairzinho is going to come swinging for the fences. There's no doubt about that. And Cyril Gane has had he's only had 7 fights, but in 6 of those he's had finishes, 3 knockouts and 3 submissions. And so I'm wondering whether, if it starts to get a bit heavy on the feet, whether Cyril Gane might think, well, I've got 2 of my 3 wins in the UFC are by submission. And so perhaps maybe I'm going to take him to the floor and try and work Jairzinho down there, because I don't think Jairzinho's got anything on the ground. So I think perhaps that's something to look at. The only other thing to maybe look at for Cyril Gane is that his old sparring partner took Biggie Boy out in 20 seconds, and maybe just throwing heavy hands at Jairzinho is another way of maybe taking him out. But this is his toughest test, like Ankalaev with Krylov. This is a massive one. He's been put on that rocket ship, as Prav says, by the UFC. This is the big fight now for him. Win this, and you find yourself in the top 3, and you can start calling for potential title fights in the next 12 months. So I'm going to take Big Cyril. I do love him. He is in Crush Corner, and I think he'll finish Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and I'm going to take him in round 3.
Nice, solid effort. And if you ever say Cyril Gane's got lovely fluid, I'm just going to leave, because those words just don't need to be said from Crush Corner, man. Let's keep it PG, mate.
I said he had lovely fluid movement.
Yeah, you said he had lovely fluid and then paused for a little bit too long for me, mate. A little bit too long. But no, I'm with you on the Cyril hype train. I think he's a very, very good athlete. I think he's a good looking chap as well. He's a good looking chap.
Beautiful.
I think it will be a very good test for him. Both of these guys are still very early in their careers as well, with regards to their mixed martial arts careers. With Biggie Boy obviously being 11-1, and Big Scissor going into this at 7-0, I believe. So it's not like they're matching him up against some crazy dude that's been fighting for the past 35 years. But even if they did, I think it would predominantly end in tears anyway. If they were to match up Cyril Gane versus Overeem, for instance. I heard a little something earlier about Derek Lewis maybe fighting Overeem to give Overeem that little step to get back into the top five. But I don't want to see that. Do you know what I mean? Derek Lewis will absolutely blast Overeem's head off, and no one wants to see that fight. I don't want to see that fight. I love Overeem. I don't want to see him take an L like that. But Prath, how do you think this is going, man? Do you think, obviously this is 5 rounds as well? This is a main event, 5 rounds. I do not see these big boys going 5 rounds.
Oh man, yeah, I don't. And the other thing as well, while I was listening to George obviously give Cyril Gane a glowing review there, I was just kind of looking at Biggie Boy's record here, and it's actually scary that most of his victories just say KO punch. It doesn't say TKO punches, KO punch, one punch knockout power.
Singular.
Crazy bad. Singular punch knockout power. I love Biggie Boy, man. I think he's got a real cool, he has a real cool approach to the game. He is very respectful, and he comes into fight, man. He comes in like a savage. I don't think even the Overeem fight, when he was fighting him over 5 rounds, you could tell it was a little bit more of a patient Rozenstruik. Overeem was doing great work, and obviously not allowing Rozenstruik.
He was actually losing that fight as well.
With Overeem just didn't really give him a chance to do anything. Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts to this 5-round fight, coming from that kind of fight as well, which was a bit more grindy. I don't think Cyril Gane will try and grind out Rozenstruik as much. I think it will just be kind of a chess match, man, on the feet. And I think they're both going to be, I don't want to say that they're going to be hesitant to throw hands, because I think they both are very, very aware that they will knock each other out. So I think it will kind of either go like the Francis fight, where they just immediately come to the center of the octagon and start swinging hammers, or it's going to be a little bit more like the Overeem fight, maybe a little bit less wrestling and a little bit more stand up, a little bit more tactical kind of approach from both guys. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I will be the funny casual for today and say that I'm going to go with Rozenstruik, and I think Rozenstruik does our boy George here dirty in maybe the 2nd round or the 3rd round.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's one of them things, isn't it? With these heavyweights, they're both very young as well. They're both, not got a mass amount of experience in mixed martial arts in the UFC. So it's just, they're both put on this pedestal, it gives them such a huge platform to be able to boost themselves into the top echelon of the division and be calling out for a big name next. Obviously, if Cyril Gane wins, then he will definitely be calling out for someone like Derek Lewis, or even Curtis Blades, for instance, taking that fight as well. These top guys are all going to be fighting or have fought already over the next coming weeks. So I think it will stuff up the division as well with like the top 6 or 7, because we're going to be waiting a long time until they all come around again. So it may be a little bit annoying with regards to that, but I think it's going to be a great fight. I think it's going to be. I think Cyril's going to get it done. I think it will be a bit of a back and forth as well, as both of you have said. I think it's going to be a back and forth, feeling each other out, and it also it adds such a huge amount of pressure as well to these fighters. Obviously, having very few losses on Rozenstruik's side and 0 losses on Cyril Gane's side. Coming into these fights as well, you kind of think, wow, I'm going to get, these big boys, man, someone's going to get knocked out or someone's going to be doing the knocking out. But then again, we might see like a Tom Aspinall the weekend where he kind of pieced him apart on the feet and then went for a sub. You just don't know. Maybe Cyril Gane's going to catch Rozenstruik. He's going to go down a little bit and then he's going to jump on his back. He's a big dude as well. What did he walk in last time? He was very, very close to 265, no?
I think he was I don't know. I think he was a straight 260. So really? He was pretty close. Yeah.
Wow. And he's built like a
cut as well.
House as well.
He cut. Yeah. He's not got an ounce of fat on that gentleman as well, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely. I think he's going to be a crazy fight, but I am going to go Gane on that one. I'm going to go Gane. I think he is this new era of MMA fighter, and I think he's with his pedigree of the background of the standard of training partners that he's had in the past as well. I think he's going to make some serious noise in the division as well. Fingers crossed that he does.
Just one last point I wanted to make, just to kind of round that off with a nice little bow there, is it kind of circles back to our conversation about the boxing and MMA, losses, wins, and things like that. Look at the both of these guys' record, right? 1 loss, 0 losses, right? This isn't a fight that you would regularly see unless it was like a gigantic pay-per-view Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin type fight. You don't see a guy with such a record like that fighting someone who's only had 1 loss, and obviously every other fight he's had has been extremely dominant. So that's why we love UFC. That's why we love mixed martial arts. Good luck to both of the guys, man, because that is knockout city right there, man. So
Yeah.
protect your chin at all times.
I'll add to that point as well. The perfect example of this in boxing is Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. They're 2 undefeated boxers. The boxing world 1,000,000% needs that fight. It will never happen because they both don't want to lose. They both can't. They don't want to. And this is why the UFC and mixed martial arts is better, because these 2 guys in the boxing world would end up avoiding each other, and the UFC just gone, nah, fuck that. You're going to fight each other instead, and that's why it's so great. And so, yeah, like Prav said, good luck to both of them, and hopefully Big Cyril can bring it home, and Crush Corner looks quite pretty on Sunday.
That's it. Big Scissor. Big Scissor's making noise.
Big scissor.
Anyway, we'll be doing a post fight as well on the show, as we always do, and naturally we'll be live tweeting. Follow us on Twitter at Fighting Talk 2, over on the Instagram page at Fighting Talk 2 as well, and then naturally check out the other YouTube videos we've done. We did a fantastic episode on weight cutting as well a couple of weeks ago, which was really great. And we've got a goat conversation coming up. The future goat, the past goat, the present goat. There's so many goats. We've got like a suburban farm here. It's all going down. We don't need to mow the lawn because the goats are doing it for us. But like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your friends' family's family. All the love and support is all very, very well welcomed, and we appreciate it greatly. Until next time, thank you very much for joining in, and we'll see you soon.